It wasn't as straightforward as you might have liked, but Lewis Hamilton was crowned Formula 1 2017 World Champion, the fourth title of his career. Chip from the Digital Grandstand here. Welcome everyone to the Beyond the Finish Line report for the 2017 Formula 1 Mexico Grand Prix. High altitude, extreme aero packages, engines and brakes pushed to their limit. These were the main challenges that greeted the F1 field this past weekend. On a track that suited the RB13 like a glove, Max Verstappen was feeling more than ready to grab the first ever pole position of his career on Saturday. In fact, his first Q3 lap was almost good enough. It took a tremendous effort from title contender Vettel to snatch it at the last moment. Sporting the new floor and front wing introduced in the US and feeling much more at ease with the setup, Sebastian threw caution to the wind as he tried to help his chances of taking the title fight to Brazil. His final Q3 lap was just fast enough for the German to claim his 50th pole position in Formula 1. Teammate Raikkonen, without that new floor, only managed a P5 slot on the grid, 8 tenths down on Vettel. At Red Bull, Verstappen and Ricciardo were very much neck and neck throughout free practices, but come Saturday, Daniel just couldn't find any grip. Therefore, Red Bull decided to swap the power unit in Ricciardo's car in the hope that this will see him through to the end of the season. So a P6 in quali turned into a P16 on the starting grid. Mercedes were very much the third force throughout the weekend, but Hamilton made the most of the issues around him to take a very respectable P3 with Bottas a fraction behind in fourth. The Renault and Force India drivers completed the top 10 with Esteban Ocon managing to out-qualify the struggling Daniel Ricciardo. Sunday, championship up for grabs for Hamilton, a do-or-die race for Vettel, and nothing to lose for Verstappen. Lights out and Vettel gets away cleanly. Verstappen makes a solid start and tries to cover off Hamilton. In the long run to turn 1, the Red Bull hits its rev limiter. This was a blessing in disguise for Max, as the Dutchman makes the most of the slipstream of the leading Ferrari with Hamilton just behind. Max breaks the toe first, as Lewis goes even more to the left. 3 drivers, 3 different teams, 3 all-stars of the sport going side by side into the first braking zone. Hamilton, with the title almost in the bag, elects to keep his nose out of the battle. Verstappen takes the long way round and edges slightly ahead as the outside of turn 1 becomes the inside of turn 2. Vettel, knowing fully well that a P2 was all but worthless if Hamilton has a trouble-free race, fights back. Wheel-to-wheel contact, but Verstappen is now in front. Hamilton, lurking behind ready to strike, sees the opening out of turn 2 and goes for it. In the short run to turn 3, Vettel's front wing makes slight contact with the right rear tire of Max, sending carbon fiber shards flying. Taking the long way round turn 3, Lewis leaves the space for Vettel to creep alongside him, but the Ferrari carried more speed than ideal. Wrestling the car underneath him, Sebastian understeers his front wing into the right rear tire of Hamilton, with the damage much more substantial than 5 seconds ago. Puncture and diffuser damage for Hamilton, while almost half of Vettel's wing was all over the track. 3 corners, couple of touches, and both championship contenders head for the pits. Escaping the melee behind, Verstappen just eases off into the distance. So it was Max from Bottas, Ocon, Hülkenberg, Sainz, the top 5 at the end of the first lap. Also worth mentioning was the just awful start Raikkonen had from 5th. Unable to keep up with the top 3, he was swamped into turn 1 by the chasing pack, and by lap 2 he was all the way down in P9. On the other hand, Ricciardo made the most of the drama up front to make up no less than 6 places on the opening lap. After their pit stops, Vettel was running P19 with Hamilton P20 and 13 seconds behind. Not the type of reading one would have expected after just 1 lap. Sebastian gained the place almost immediately as Carlos Sainz spun on lap 2, flat spotting all of his tires and coming into the pits. Lewis was not so fortunate. Fighting a wounded car and one not comfortable running in traffic, he was stuck behind Sainz for the better part of 22 laps. Meanwhile, Verstappen, who by lap 5 was 3 seconds ahead of Bottas and preserving his engine, was in a class of his own. Unfortunately, by this time teammate Ricciardo's charge through the field ended with an ERS-H failure. He had just passed Stroll for P7, and the component was brand new. The problem with the ERS would trouble other Renault-powered cars. The high altitude of Mexico meant that the turbine had to spin 4,000 RPM faster in order for it to work. And Renault, with their smaller turbo, meant that this was prone to overheating. So eventually, both Hartley and Hülkenberg joined Ricciardo on the sidelines with ERS failures. Back on track, Vettel was relentless. By lap 23, he was chasing down the McLarens for a spot in the top 10. Van Dorn was an easy target, but Alonso was very effectively using the Sauber of Ericsson just ahead to get DRS and defend from the Ferrari. In fact, the Spaniard made such a good job that it wasn't until the Sauber had pitted the Ferrari was finally able to get past. Vettel was in the points, but he still needed a top 2 finish to keep the championship alive. Hartley's Toro Rosso is parked on the side of the road. A virtual safety car period followed and almost everyone piled into the pits. This was bad news for Force India and Sauber. They had just pitted a few laps before in the hope of undercutting their way a few places up. As it all played out, Raikkonen was able to get ahead of both Force Indias while Stroll was also promoted to the top 5. After his second pit stop, Vettel was targeting the P7 of Magnussen. He moved past with ease on lap 37 and set his sights on Perez, 13 seconds up ahead. Lap after lap, the Ferrari pumped in lap record after lap record, with only Verstappen managing to stay within the same time range. Meanwhile, Hamilton made easy work of Gasly, Ericsson and Van Dorn. He was just outside the points in P11, but the team was sure a P8 finish was feasible. Sebastian nails an amazingly late pass on Perez for P6 into turn 4. Stroll was next, and 4 laps later the Canadian falls prey to the prancing horse. By this point, Hamilton was pressurizing Massa for P10. After a quick battle, the Merc is through, but the best battle of the race was still to be fought. Lap 59 and Vettel finally passes Ocon for 4th, but when he learns that there are 23 seconds to Kimi in P3, Seb's response is just disheartening. And so it was. An amazingly brilliant recovery drive for the German, but the P4 was all that he could manage. Lap 68 and look at this! Hamilton versus Alonso, Mercedes versus McLaren. What a duel this was, gaining and then gaining some more with DRS into turn 1. Lewis brakes impossibly late, only for Fernando to do exactly the same. Carbon dust pouring from the front brakes of the Merc while the McLaren takes the inside line. Swapping places corner after corner and going side by side into turn 4, neither ready to yield, both racing as hard and fair as possible. Finally, the superior traction out of turn 5 sees Hamilton getting P9 from Alonso, but that would be the end of his charge. After 71 laps around Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, Max Verstappen took the 3rd win of his career, with Valtteri Bottas almost 20 seconds behind and Kimi Raikkonen completing the podium. Vettel's 4th place was the result that mattered really. With 56 points between him and Hamilton and only 50 points available, the Briton is Formula 1 world champion for the 4th time in 11 years. My driver of the weekend is Fernando Alonso, because he was the only one both Vettel and Hamilton had to really fight. And he drives a McLaren Honda, which, if anything, makes Alonso's performances look that much more amazing. Massive, huge congratulations to Lewis Hamilton. You truly are the best this year. And now, let the quest for the 5th title begin. Hamilton versus Vettel is set to resume next year. But not so fast. Throw a competitive Renault engine in the mix and not only Verstappen and Ricciardo are title contenders, but also, you've guessed it, Fernando Alonso. Come on, we still have 2 races left this year. Renault, get cracking. If we don't have at least a 4-way battle at the front next year, you are responsible. And that was the Formula 1 Mexico GP. Thank you ever so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what are your thoughts of this Grand Prix and who was your driver of the weekend. Like and share this video to your Formula 1 buddies. If you're new around here, please do subscribe for more F1 related content. As always, I've been Chip from the Digital Grandstand. You can chat to me on Twitter at chip_DGS, and I'll see you next time.